Now, you know by now that I always try and make some kind of comment towards the practical applications of the things that we learn in this class. Because as much as I'd like you to remember everything that I teach you, I'm pretty aware that once you walk out of the final exam, immediately things start just dripping out of your ears, the facts that you learned. And I think that a lot of times it's more important not so much that you remember facts, but that you start incorporating those facts that you're learning in these classes into a different way of thinking, into a more sophisticated scientific way of thinking about the practical applications of some of these things. And so we've now learned that urine comes from blood. So are we able to use urine to learn things about what's going on in the body instead of drawing blood? And the answer is absolutely we are. And this is really good news for people, especially like myself, who are absolutely terrified of needles because it's always easier to collect urine than it is to collect blood. What kind of tests can we do with urine? Well, we can use something called a refractometer, which is its very own test, and it only tests for one thing, which is specific gravity. And specific gravity is really the same as density, but we're talking about a liquid substance and its density. So they designated water as being a specific gravity of 1. And by definition, 1 ml, milliliter, or 1 cc, those are the same thing, ml and cc are the same thing, of water weighs 1 gram. So urine should be approximately 1 or right around 1, so up to about 1.03 of a specific gravity. And what that means is that if you have a specific gravity of your urine that's less than 1, that means that it's not dense enough, that there's something very, very lightweight in there that probably should not be in there, or it's missing something heavier that should be in there. Whereas more commonly, if you have a density or a specific gravity that's greater than about 1.03, it means it's too dense. So you've got things in there that probably belong, so ketones, proteins, blood cells, and things like that. So another test that's much gets a lot of use is a urinalysis, and that's done by something called a dipstick, and there's many different brands of this, and each brand varies a little bit in the different sorts of things that it tests for. I gave a pretty extensive list of all the many things that it can test for on my actual PowerPoint for this lecture. But it's important to note that, for the most part, none of those things belong in normal urine. You should not have proteins or ketones or glucose or any of those things under normal situations in normal urine. It is, however, just as important to note that the presence of one of those things in a single urine test does absolutely not necessarily indicate a disease state. Can it throw up a red flag to you and suggest that perhaps you should run some more tests on this patient, or at the very least ask this patient some additional questions, and that there might be something wrong and there might be some underlying disease? Sure. But I'm going to just mention real quick a couple of examples as to why it's so important to realize that one test, one positive result of one urinalysis does not necessarily mean something serious is going on. So let's say that you have run a urinalysis and detected a small amount of blood in the urine of a female patient. Does it mean that she has kidney damage? Well, it could. Or does the patient have her period and the sample was just contaminated because she failed to sterilize properly before collecting her sample as you instructed her to do? That's entirely possible too, and believe me, this happens a lot. Another very common example is if you eat 5 Krispy Kreme donuts because you had a bad day, will you have glucose in your urine? Yes, yes, capital letters, yes, you absolutely will. Why? Well, if you remember back to that picture of the nephron where we were talking about the different sections and the things that they absorb, we talked about how there had to be carriers, right? There's got to be some little mechanism to be able to take the things out of the urine and put them back in the blood that we need, or to take the things out of the blood and put them into the nephron for secretion, right? If you overload those carriers, in other words, you fill them with so much sugar, much, much more than they can carry, some of it is going to end up in the urine. Whether it's intended to be there or not, that is what's going to happen. And certainly 5 Krispy Kreme donuts is to do that. Does it mean that you have diabetes? Well, I would say that depends on how often you have a bad day such that you feel inclined to eat 5 Krispy Kreme donuts. But for most of us who have occasional bad days, at least to the level of eating 5 Krispy Kreme donuts, no, it does not mean that you have diabetes. It just means that you ate 5 Krispy Kreme donuts. Alright, so as you've noticed, I'm sure this presentation covered the kidneys fairly extensively, but it is important to notice that there are other parts of the urinary system. And yes, they are also important, and yes, you should learn those too. There is, in fact, one more practical, your final practical. And specifically things that I would look at are the bladder, the ureters, and the urethra. Be familiar with their anatomy as well as their histology. This was not intended to be a replacement for anything, for the in-class lecture that you received, for studying the PowerPoints from the in-class lecture, for studying instead of the book. I still want you to absolutely use all of the resources that you typically use. I can't stress enough, this was meant as an additional study tool for you, as a supplement to hopefully enhance. Alright, now I want everybody to do something for me. Take a deep breath in and let it out. It's over. You're done. Thank you very, very much for watching. Like I said, even though it took a few tries, hopefully this is the last one, and this is my first time doing a flipped lecture, as they call it, and I am not sure how it's going to go, so I'd really, really, really appreciate it if you guys could let me know whether it was too long, too short, if you have any suggestions, if it helped you out, or anything like that. And I can't stress enough that if you need additional help beyond this, you're more than welcome to ask. This is not meant to replace your ability to ask me questions or to request additional help if you need it, any more than it's intended to replace the lecture that you've already been given. So I hope that you had some fun watching this. I had a little bit of fun mixed with a whole bunch of frustration making it, and I look forward to seeing you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.